Good evening and welcome to the July 24th, 2014 regular session of the Xenia City Council. We've been in an executive session discussing personnel matters immediately before this, and we are ready to begin our regular session now, and we will lead off with an invocation by the Pastor Reverend Dr. Gloria Wade Dillon from Glory Ministries, followed by the pledge led by Councilwoman Mills. If you would please rise with me for the invocation and pledge.
O Lord our God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the world thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the roaring thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. God, once again, it's your servants coming humbly with bowed heads and humbled hearts and thanksgiving. We thank you for the blessings of this day. We thank you for the many ways in which you have kept us. And we just want to give you praise, glory, and honor. And now, as the councilwoman and the mayor and the councilmen and the officers and officials are about to conduct your business, we pray for sensibility. We pray that you would just conduct business in such a way that in all things you would be glorified and honored. We thank you for everyone that's gathered here. And we pray this evening a special prayer for those who are grieving the loss of loved ones as a result of plane crashes and as a result of so many things that are happening in our country. You're a good God. You're a gracious God. And we're calling on you, and we're thanking you and blessing you in advance for the things that you've done and the things that are yet to do. And we're just going to give you all praise, glory, and honor. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Reverend Wade Dillon and Councilwoman Mills. May I have roll call, please?
Vice President Long.
Here.
Councilman Kaut.
Here.
Councilman Louderback.
Here.
Councilman Smith.
Here.
Councilwoman Mills.
Here.
Mayor Bayless.
Here.
President Engel.
Here. Thank you. May I have a motion, please, for the approval of the July 10th, 2014 special session minutes?
So moved, Mr. President.
Moved by Councilman Louderback. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Mills. Any discussion or question on these minutes? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaut.
Aye.
Councilman Louderback.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Bayless.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Now a motion, please, for the July 10th, 2014 regular session minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Mills. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Councilman Smith. Sorry. Any discussion or question on these minutes, please? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Abstain.
Councilman Kaut.
Aye.
Councilman Louderback.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Bayless.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
And finally, a motion for the July 17th, 2014 special and executive session.
So moved.
Moved by the mayor. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Councilman Smith. Any discussion or question on these minutes? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaut.
Aye.
Councilman Louderback.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Abstain.
Mayor Bayless.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Now we have a number of special presentations tonight. First, Mr. Bob, is it Bosel? Bossel. Sir, if you would please step to the podium. Mr. Bossel will be speaking to us about the Xenia Fish Pantry.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting me here this evening and tell you a little bit about our fish food pantry. I don't know really anyone on the council here this evening, although I do know the mayor. I remember you making a piece of the eulogy of Jim McCard's funeral about a year or so ago, and Jim and Lou were, oh gosh, they've been with the fish pantry for a number of years. So And then Councilman Lauterbach, we have never met, although we've met on the phone a few times, making sure that everything was in order. I don't know if many of you are familiar with the food pantry. We've been in business since 1979, and it was started by the Christ Episcopal Church. In fact, the ladies of that church started that in 1979 as an emergency effort for the people after the Xenia tornado. In 1994, the offices of the Fish Food Pantry and the activities were then moved to the Greene County Service Center over on 541 Ledbetter Road, and that's where we are today. We have a board of directors of 12 individuals, generally represented by a number of church council members that we meet generally on a quarterly basis. It's chaired by Peg Cannon, and Peg has been with the food pantry for, Lord, I don't know, maybe 30 years. I don't really know. Peg is about 80. She's in her mid-80s, and I think this is her life, is this food pantry. The staff is strictly volunteers. We have over 100 volunteers to address all the issues and the needs relative to food for Xenia, on a first-time basis for Fairborn, periodically for Jamestown, Beaver Creek, once in a while also. But typically, 99% of our clients come from Xenia or the Xenia area. It's also staffed with, in quotes, volunteers from the Job and Family Services, the juvenile court system. On Tuesday mornings, we generally have a group of 5 or 6 juveniles that will come in and assist us with moving the food pieces around, putting food in bags and things of that nature. There are some other local organizations such as General Electric, Eleno, and the 4-H Clover Patch Club comes in periodically to assist us with the services. Community support comes from a number of organizations in Xenia, notably Kroger's, Aldi's, Groceryland, and Groceryland really in concert with the WGC golf course. WGC golf course every fall holds what they call the turkey shoot. And there's no cost to the Xenia Food Pantry to have members come and play. Any of the dollars that are collected, and it's usually a $50 or $60 or $70 tournament cost, is rolled over into vouchers, which are presented to Groceryland, and then people can come and get food, or the food pantry itself can come in and get bulk food to assist. We also have the letter carriers drive. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that, where the postal carriers in the spring put a little notice on your doorstep saying we're going to collect food next Saturday, and they bring that in. We pick it up from the post office and bring it back to the food pantry. Similarly, with the Boy Scout drive, they do that in the spring. They do the same sort of a thing, only they bring the food directly to the food pantry. Other contributors are Bob Evans, the restaurant. Periodically, their warehouse has product that we will pick up. And this, I can't pronounce this, Chipotle or Chipotle, or people always tells me it's whatever it is, and I can never remember. Anyway, Chipotle on Mondays give us excess food that they have remaining. The Dayton Food Bank is our biggest supporter. The Dayton Food Bank is a federally funded organization. It has a massive warehouse in Dayton on Armour Street, which runs right off of Gettysburg. We get a shipment every Thursday from the Dayton Food Bank that will hold maybe 8 or 9 pallets of food. And by food, I'm talking about things that are just staples, like cans of soup, boxes of cereal, pasta, spaghetti sauce, things of that nature, and then also frozen meat products. excess that comes from Sam's Club and Walmart, they provide that. They also provide us with, the food bank provides us with bread products, pastry products, and things like that that typically come from Myers, Walmart, and Sam's Club, and that all comes into us. Finances. We have a number of sources. One, of course, is the federal government, and twice a year we get a check from the federal government, and that's based upon the number of families, people we have served in the previous 6 months. And so that moves as the numbers of people that we have utilizing our services. Then we have donations from individuals, we have donations from churches and companies. The books are audited every year by the federal government, so we need to keep our 401c3 program alive by passing that particular audit. Costs other than food, and the only costs that come out of the dollar that you give us is for the telephone lines. There are a very small amount of mileage costs that we have, and paper for our printer or our computer. So I can stand here in front of you and say that every dollar you give, about 99.5 cents goes into food product. Everything else is given to us in terms of food, space, power, light, heat, air conditioning, things like that. And that comes from Greene County, because it's the Greene County offices. The food distribution process is originally was an emergency shelter, I guess you might say, back in the late 70s, early 80s. And today we will provide anyone that comes in and is qualified, and we have a qualification list based upon your annual earnings. You'll get 3 days of food for 3 meals a day. And then if you like to sign up for the next distribution, that's generally, depending upon how much food we have available, every 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. So on a continuing basis, we can provide some assistance. We also have a Christmas program where we, in the middle of November to the middle of December, we provide, for people that are signed up, we provide them a Kroger gift card. And it's a $20 gift card, and it's for food only, for human consumption. You can't buy dog food. The process of coming in, I know you can't see this form, but it's a federal form that says that you're verifying that your household size is X number of people, your yearly income is thus and such or less, and that is really about it. And then we keep track on a computer of the individual, the family that they represent, their age, their gender, their sex, and we provide that all on a format that is captured by the Dayton Food Bank. They consolidate all of that information, and then they can report to the federal government as to how many people we're serving. Who are those people? How old are those people? How many in a family? How many times have they come into the food pantry, and so on and so forth. So they got a pretty good feel of what's going on in our food pantry. I don't know if there are specifics that anybody may ask or have. I'm open for questions. I know I've only got 10 minutes, so I'm kind of running through this as quickly as possible. Any questions? Dale?
Just a couple of comments.
Yeah.
I want to commend you and your organization. You do great work. You know, I don't think the public realizes, and maybe the mayor and Councilwoman Mills can help me with this, what percent of our kids are on the school lunch program?
Over 60% are on a free or reduced lunch.
There-
75 now.
75
75.
now.
Talked to these yesterday.
Yeah. So there is a hunger problem
Oh, yeah.
Not only in the Dayton Daily News not too long ago, it said 17% in the area go hungry. So Xenia being the county seat, and I think a lot of that percentage is here in Xenia. If one wanted to, what would your wish be to have if they wanted to donate? Would it be food items or would it be cash?
Of course, cash is always the best, because then we can go out and purchase whatever we need, okay? And what we do is, Peg is responsible for this. She'll scour these ads every Saturday, Sunday, whenever those flyers come through. Oh, Kroger's got corn on sale, 3 cans for $1. Okay, so we can go purchase that at a pretty good price. Oh, they got cream of mushroom soup, it's blah, blah, and so on and so forth. That's number one. Number two, of course, food donations are always welcome.
Would that be non-perishable items, I'm assuming, like peanut butter and...
Food items, we can't take nor can we distribute toothbrushes, toilet paper, paper towels, non-edibles. We can't supply that. We're not allowed to supply that. But it's food items, yeah.
Do you have refrigeration?
Please?
Do you have refrigeration?
Yeah, oh yeah. We got
Okay.
refrigerators, freezers, yeah.
Okay.
I see a good buy on something, yeah.
I saw in the paper, I think yesterday, before, where you were in need of volunteers. If one wanted to volunteer, how would they get a hold of you? Your phone number?
Just give us, yeah, we'll give you the phone number. It's 372-8441. But if people want to drop in, see us, see what it looks like, see what the work is, that's welcomed also. Yeah. But yeah, volunteers always welcome, especially anybody with a truck. And by that I mean just a pickup truck, because I, for instance, will go down to Pepperidge Farms down in 71 and 35. I'll pick things up down there. I'll go down to the Dayton Food Bank and pick up food down there. So that's kind of nice to have, individuals.
What are your hours of operation?
We're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. The only time we're closed is when school is closed in the wintertime for weather conditions.
I got a quick question. Sometimes in the fall, like in my garden, I have way too many tomatoes or green beans.
Bring them in.
Okay.
Bring them in, yeah. Because right now, that's what we're getting. We're starting on tomatoes. We're starting to see tomatoes. We'll see sweet corn in another couple, 3 weeks maybe. We see a lot of potatoes, tomatoes, sweet corn, peppers. Yeah, oh yeah, bring all that in. Yeah, because that goes like crazy, yeah. That's good, yeah.
Any other
I
comments or
have-
questions?
Some handouts here. I don't know if there are enough for everybody.
Sir,
They're
one
about
point of-
2 years old, but they still tell the same story, and they'll tell you about the fish pantry in general.
Sir, one clarifying point. You had said you would accept about all varieties of food donation.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you take frozen products. Would you take non-frozen but perishable products, or do you just prefer the frozen
No,
ones?
either one.
Either one.
Either
Okay,
one.
thank you.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions?
Thank you very much,
Good,
sir.
you're very welcome. Thank you.
Our next presentation will be by Pastor Greg Delaney from the Jeremiah Tree.
Pass those around for you, Mark. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to come over today and fill you in a little bit about the Jeremiah Tree. The Jeremiah Tree is located at 118 West 2nd Street here in Xenia. We've been working from that location now since about February of 2013. And primarily what the Jeremiah Tree is designed to do is our simple mission, and it's on the deck that you're going to get there in just a second, is through relationships, we connect those in need to Christ and to resources. And really the way that the tree was birthed, if you will, was my other role is as pastor at AHOP, and I do a recovery and addiction ministry there. And as that ministry grew, we began to see more and more people asking of us for help with practical issues. Things like, how do I get connected to food? Where can I get some clothing? Where are other services that are available? And at the beginning, we tried to handle those things out of the ministry specifically. We found that to be untenable. And so we began to look around, and through my experience of being here in town for so long, remembered that we had lots of ministerial help that was out there. We have community help that was out there. The challenge was our folks that were asking for the help were having difficulty navigating it. How do I get this, that, or the other? And so we began to collaborate with some other churches, and with that brought this together and ended up getting this space in order to provide what I call a single point of contact for anybody that wants to come that just needs help. And we try to connect them currently to that help. And so part of it has been church help. Other things have been developing relationships with other community partners that already exist and do help. Green Metropolitan Housing, CAP, there's a list here in just a second I'll share with you. But the whole point was, how do we bring people in and connect them to the resources that they need? We are a gospel-first ministry, and so our intention is to be very relational with the clients that come in. We pray with every client that comes in. Our heart is to introduce them to Jesus. But on the back end of that, we recognize that this practical assistance sometimes opens the door to that, also provides some relief in assisting them with what they've got going on. Since 2013, when we got started, we've had about a little over 500 cases of people coming in, and those cases could be multiple family members or single folks, looking for anything from food assistance to clothing. We've had unusual requests like steel-toed shoes because I just started a job. We've worked with TCN inside the jail to bus a couple of folks who just were recently released back home to Florida, things like that. We really have built the ministry around the client need. And so if a client comes to us with an unusual request, often we will go off and try to find a partnership in order to help with that. If you can kind of take a look at the third page, it gives a what we do. It's really kind of a picture of how we operate. If you take a look at area churches and community services, collaborating with the Jeremiah Tree and the team that's there, it's the blue one there that's on page 3 or so. Initially going to Christ, but then on the back end, connecting folks to those other services. So whatever those things are, community services, benevolent partnerships, new branches of our tree team. Our whole intent is to try to meet the need the best that we can. And often it's not through our own benevolence. We do have some of our own benevolence that we do offer, but it's usually through the benevolence of other folks that we're working with. If you take a look there in the branches slide, the branches really give you a good feel of who we've established relationships with currently. And all of these folks, they're either formal or informal, but typically we will go to those places. We learn what their rules are. We try to work within their framework. And so if we have a client comes in and says, I'm really in need of housing assistance, which we're going to talk about in just a second, we know what CAP's requirements are in order to have entry into there. So we'll assist with that process. Sometimes folks come in that don't have money for a birth certificate, or they're not really sure how to get an ID, or some of the other things, background checks, that kind of thing. We'll help them navigate that prior to going to CAP in an effort to help CAP be more efficient with their process. CAP, in turn, works with us in that the folks that are in transitional housing, for example, they have a requirement of 20 hours of community service. That community service can be performed in and through the Jeremiah Tree and through our partners that we work with as well. And so we really try to create a two-way street, a conduit of help and service to both sides of things. Today I'm here as a result of, I think there was a recent group of folks that came in with a homelessness concern and an expectation that they had. And we interact with the homeless community at the Jeremiah Tree daily. Probably since our opening, I know that we have probably assisted more than 300 homeless people and families. Part of our intense work that we do there is through the wintertime, we actually partner with the Christ Episcopal Church, which provides sheltering services right around here next to the library. They do that from November to March. We assist them by providing on the other side of that day sheltering services for the folks that are there, and that they only provide time at night. And then also we provide volunteer help. We also help them with supplies and things to go along with the night shelter. We really, over the course of last year, we had 60-plus people that came through the evening shelter. We touched every one of those folks in some form or another within the Jeremiah Tree. Of those that came through, we only have 2 that weren't provided at least an avenue to a longer-term solution for housing through the tree. And so one of the things is we've helped the person under the bridge. We've helped single men, single women. We've helped families. In fact, I'll be honest to tell you that my little brother was a client this year, and we actually helped him through his homelessness crisis by partnering with the folks in town and other agencies. One of the things I wanted to share is that not all the homeless are vagrants. Not all of them are how they were portrayed the other day in the article that I saw in the Gazette. The challenge is that we have a finite number of beds available for us to leverage when we do have a homeless person or family come in. If I do kind of aggressive math, we have about 190 beds total within the community that we can place people in. I think at the last point in time calculation, our homeless condition in Greene County is up over 1,000. And so the demographic of our homeless is much broader than sometimes what's painted as the person on the corner that's homeless. Today alone, I had a family of 4 in my office that are currently being housed by the Jeremiah Tree at the Xenia Country Inn, that we're working through the process to assist them. I just recently, as of today, yesterday, took a family of 4 that we had placed at the Country Inn and put them into the Red Cross shelter. So without question, almost daily, we're assisting someone that's in a homeless framework. So our heart today would be to come and let you know that in the future, should you need to direct someone, should the community be looking for the resource to help manage a situation for someone, we want to make ourselves available for that. That is what our heart is, and we want to continue to try to help in that process, refine that process, improve that process. One of the things that we're clearly challenged with is something that I will call transitional processing. And what I mean by that is a good example is we had a gentleman recently addicted to Percocet. He went to the process that would say go get assessed at TCN. TCN wanted to offer him the Christopher House in order to help him, through his addiction. The timing in that between assessment and getting in was weeks. He was homeless. And so thankfully, we were able to take what was going to be a 6-week window and turn it into a 2-week window, but we still needed to manage that transition for that gentleman. And so that was through some partnerships, that was through, using the relationship that we have at the Country Inn, really kind of using, duct tape and baling twine to kind of pull these resources together. So from our perspective, what we would love to collaborate with the city with the leadership with, is the possibility of some type of sheltering so that we could, in emergency situations, because homelessness sometimes just happens. In the case of the family we just moved from the Country Inn into the Red Cross, they were staying with a sister, everything was going swimmingly, and suddenly it wasn't. And then we have a family of 4 with no place to stay. And so having a place where we could have managed care for them, also a place to get, a bed, and then begin to work them through the processes that are in place, which are excellent in the community, that would be a very big help to us, and I think to the community in general. So, from our perspective, from a cost standpoint, just to kind of give you a feel for it, we have probably invested over $20,000 as a ministry in rooms over the course of our life. That's quite a bit for a group that doesn't have a lot of funding. And so we're looking constantly for a way to be more efficient with that. And we believe that with some type of 24/7 kind of sheltering opportunity for emergencies, we'll be able to provide some case management. We have other teams and other partnerships that we have. We actually have partnerships that go as far west as Tacoma, as far east as Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So we have a lot of good intellectual property to pull from to help us if we were to have one of our own here. And so, so part of what we wanted to do today was just make you aware of who we were. Clearly, I can't, do it in 6 or 7 minutes, but just to let you know that we are invested in the community. We're the boots on the ground every day, touching some of the folks that are in need of food, and we work with Bob and his team too at the fish pantry, all that kind of stuff. But our heart is to how do we continue to improve the overall process? How do we help to improve the overall homeless condition of some of the folks that we encounter? There's a couple things I left a verse in there that kind of drives what we do, and then my information, my contact information is the last slide there, as well as my administrative assistant that sits there. She's my director, Cheryl Carter, who many of you may know from IHN days. She's part of my team as well. I know that was quick. You have a brochure, you have a card from me, as well as the deck. If there's anything that you have questions on, clearly I'll try to answer a few if there's time. But if not, feel free to give us a call at the tree and we'll try to walk through that, okay?
Thank you very much, sir.
Just
Councilman
a
Monahan.
couple of things, and this is a question for you, Brent. As I'm sitting here thinking, say our police department finds homeless, whether it be under a bridge or somewhere where they shouldn't be, does our police department direct them to somebody like this organization, or and give them an option where to
Yeah.
spend the night?
It would be circumstantial. I mean, if there were any substance abuse or alcohol issues might be associated, there might be a little bit different process. But as we find individuals, the instruction is to try to provide services. We had a fantastic conversation, met with some of these folks earlier this week. I think it was eye-opening for the mayor and myself and the staff that we had there. We have some work to do, I'll be honest. I mean, I think as a city, we have some work to do to make sure that our offices, our staff are aware of the services that are out there, and that when we have either situations through the police division, or we frequently get folks who will walk into the city manager's office, that we can direct them to the services that we have available locally. As an example, we had a case last year that I shared the other day with these folks. We had a single mom walk in with a 1-year-old, July of last year, one of the hottest days, had literally nowhere to go, had a stroller and a diaper bag, and that was it. So, you know, these folks are here. We can choose to ignore the problem, but it will not go away. And I do think that as a city organization and as a community, there is more that we can do and more that we should be doing, and we certainly, I think, initiated that conversation to try to do that.
You mentioned the 190 beds. Did I hear you correctly? I mean, I know of 2 homeless shelters, but that's about all I can.
And where I calculate that from is, we have the domestic violence, so that's a specific group of people, but there are beds there. We have IHN, beds there, Red Cross, beds there. Community Action has a certain number of transitional beds available. If you look at Housing Solutions, they have properties that are available, and then in the wintertime, we consider 16 to 20 beds available at the shelter. But clearly, and I have to give our folks credit in each one of these agencies. We do a wonderful job of playing musical chairs, and in essence, putting people more toward long-term things, some more permanent things, and continuing to keep the process moving. But in the case right now, I can say personally, I've got 18 folks in limbo today that I'm working with a variety of solutions, trying to place them either in a more long-term sheltering solution or in a potential long-term housing solution. And that's just a snapshot of July the 24th or whatever it is today. So.
Just as I mentioned earlier, there's not only hunger in our city, there's a lot of homeless.
Yes, sir.
Councilman, our victim advocates work with them weekly. I do a lot of placements through the domestic violence shelter, but do other placements as well. There's a lot of people that are homeless for a lot of varied reasons, but domestic violence is a pretty common one. So you have a lot of kids, and we've worked with Greg quite a bit, and Greg works with us quite a bit by letting us know when he has a prisoner that he's working with, if he's got concerns that we can help them with. So we have a good open door.
Yes.
I think us as human beings have a responsibility. I mean, some of us are just a paycheck away or a medical catastrophe away of being homeless.
Yes, sir.
And we as humans have a responsibility to help the lesser of these. I appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
You want to introduce the
Sure.
ones that came with you?
I have Cheryl Carter, who I mentioned, and she is part of my admin team. This is Blair and Marlene Labig. Marlene is the president of my board, and Blair is the director of my facilities at the Jeremiah Tree. So,
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Just want
Vice President.
to thank Greg for coming. So often, homelessness is just a consequence of other situations in life. And Jeremiah Tree is what I learned of in the last few weeks. Particularly talking with Ron a little bit, sharing an email, and Judy at the CAP, Community Action Partnership, I'm very good friends with. And the most effective programs are one like Community Action Partnership, like Jeremiah Tree, who try to help more than just providing the bed. It's providing the help they need with overcoming addiction. If it's getting a job or getting a resume together or getting a suit and or a shirt to wear to an interview. The services are there. So thank you again to your team for coming.
and we definitely take a very holistic approach. And we were mentioning to Brett just yesterday, one of the challenges that we face is that we're fixers by nature. And what we're really trying to do is go beyond that fix, because we do have some folks that we get fixed and then they sabotage things in the long run. So it is what we've learned. It comes through investment. And we're willing to make that investment, and we do believe it's intentional and a relational kind of environment that where it thrives. So, again, thank you so much for letting me have a chance to talk. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Our final special presentation of the evening is our Development Director, Mr. Steve Brodsky, with our quarterly economic development update status, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pass out the report here so you have a hard copy of it. As I usually do, a brief overview of where we are at economically. You'll see a lot of tables in there that come from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. For May, which is the latest month available, the unemployment rate for the city of Xenia was 6%. This is up just slightly from April when it was 5.9. As we have been for some time, we're about 1 percentage point higher than the county. They were at 5% in May, 4.9 in April. State has been at 5.3 in both April and May. Preliminary figures for June, and they're available for the state. They were not yet available for counties or cities, but shows an increase at the state level to 5.9%. As I like to do, a little deeper dive beyond just the percentage, because there's a lot of things that go in there. The number of people who are actually unemployed is up slightly. I think it was up by about 15 people. However, the total number of employed people is also up, as is the total labor force. So when your labor force is increasing and your unemployment rate is decreasing or holding steady, that means that people are finding jobs. The last time we were at 6% or below was in 2007. So it's been 7 years since we've seen a rate that low. Interestingly enough, if you look at December of that year when we were at, I believe, 6.1%, the number of unemployed was about the same as what it is today. However, the number of employed people and the labor force is both more than 200 people higher today than it was in 2007. So obviously, we've weathered the recession. We are slowly seeing progress and jobs being added, and I think right now we're in pretty decent shape. Some of the major projects, I am absolutely ecstatic to tell you that Hooven and Allison is basically done. The no further action letter, and that is a letter that we send to the state of Ohio to say, this is what you asked us to do and this is what we did. That NFA was submitted on June 30th. To give you some idea of what it takes to put one of those together, I just for kicks and giggles measured it. It is literally more than 13 inches thick with all the appendices and attachments. Very comprehensive document. The state obviously has to review all of that, so we anticipate it will probably be around the end of the year by the time they go through their process. Ultimately, we will get a covenant not to sue, and what that says is the state of Ohio pledges to the city of Xenia that they will not take any regulatory actions against us for contamination that may be on that property prior to the time we submitted the NFA. Obviously, if someone dumps a 55-gallon drum of something on there, we're going to be responsible for it. But from that point going back, they say that you did what we asked you to do, so we will take no action against you. One thing I did want to note, when we purchased the property from National Land Developers, one of the caveats that was in the purchase agreement gave that entity the right to make us whole and repurchase the property within a 60-day time frame of submittal of that NFA. They have been sent a certified letter telling them that the NFA has been submitted, your 60 days has started. This is the approximate amounts to date that we have incurred that it will cost you in order to repurchase the property. To the best of my knowledge, we have not heard anything from that group. We may closer to the end of August, which is when their time is up. But once that is up, if we have not heard it, then we will be the owner and we will go forward with the RFP process, trying to get some folks interested in locating there. Our other CORF project, which is on the OVCH campus, is also done. That NFA is being prepared should be submitted within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Earlier in the week, we had officials from both Ohio EPA and the Ohio Development Services agencies, and they collaborate on the Clean Ohio program. We had about 4 people come out and visited both sites, and they were very pleased with what has been done and didn't seem to think that we would have any issues given the work that was done. Kmart obviously is another project that we've been working very aggressively on. It has taken a good bit of staff time, but myself and Brian Forshner, as well as the city manager's office, city attorney's office, have been in contact both with prospective developer and the building owner. I think we're getting closer. I'd like to be able to stand here and tell you that by this date, this is what's going to happen. I can't, but I can tell you that there has been progress. It's been frustrating. It's been a case of 1 step forward and 2 steps back oft times, but I think we're now at least moving in the right direction, all of the parties. So hopefully we will see something there fairly soon. Leads from the state. We had a pretty active quarter this last quarter. We actually received, your handout says 11. It's actually 13. We received 2 of them late this afternoon from the Development Coalition. So we've had 13 leads from either the Dayton Development Coalition or the state. One of them was for land for a site. Unfortunately, we were not able to respond. The client specifically wanted to be on an interstate highway and said that a 4-lane highway was not acceptable. That's actually very rare. Typically, they'll say an interstate or 4-lane, which obviously US 35 qualifies for. This particular client did not want a 4-lane highway. It had to specifically be an interstate designated highway. The other 12 were for buildings. Of that, we have responded to 5 of those leads. With one of our buildings, the others we were not able to respond to either because of building size, ceiling height, or some other specialized requirement that we could not meet. The other thing is, of course, we've been continuing to work with Community Gain on that project. The Business Retention and Expansion Program is now in full swing. We started out with some focus groups, specifically with downtown retailers, to get their impressions of what they like about being in the city, what they felt we could do better, some of the challenges they are facing. I could tell you that as a result of that, what we heard is they think that the city is heading in the right direction. They really appreciate all of the efforts that the city has made, particularly in the downtown area and in the investments. And most of their issues have nothing to do with the city, but it's more the economy in general and specifically just the challenges of being a small business. But we heard some very positive things out of those groups. We also have scheduled about a dozen individual visits, primarily with our manufacturing companies. Started that actually yesterday. I think we're doing 10 or 11 of them in the next 2 weeks. And over the next month, we'll continue to schedule those and meet with those individuals, again, to find out what their needs are, how we can assist them in any way, and also to ask them, hey, how are we doing? Are there things that we can do better as a city, as a county, as a region, to try to help you and your business? So once we have that and have that data, we will have that in a report and certainly share it with the council. That I'll open it to any questions.
Any questions, please? Councilman Cowell.
Thank you very much. I know Councilman Lauterbach's, alluded to it the last couple of weeks about his unhappiness with economic development and the things not happening in the city. And going back, thinking about it myself, I guess I'm not real happy either with the things or lack thereof. Something as simple as the quarterly report. I thank you for the information on unemployment and all that. I don't know about the rest of council. That's not what I'm looking for on a quarterly update on economic development. I'm looking for specific touches within the city, specific things that we are doing as an economic development department to reach out to businesses, specific where we're getting our leads. I mean, we mentioned Dayton Development Coalition all the time. Is that the only place we're getting our leads? Are we looking other places? You know, what are the goals and objectives that we're assigning to our economic development department? Do you have goals and objectives each quarter? Can you share those goals with council and where we are in meeting those goals and objectives? I mean, I think we all agreed we wanted to take a more hands-on approach on economic development. So, an unemployment report, that's not what I'm looking for. I personally think we've spent, economic development spent way too much on Hooven and Allison. That should have been farmed out to somebody else. If we were spending that much time on Hooven and Allison, then we needed somebody else taking care of, contractors and all the stuff that go with Hooven and Allison. I mean, I agree, eventually, now that that property is cleaned up, that's a marketable product for the city, and it's Steve's responsibility to market that product to the outside area besides the city of Xenia. The site visits, I know we talked about site visits months ago. I mean, me personally, I'm kind of, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe the time frame is, this is when it was supposed to start. I thought the site visits were supposed to be started months ago.
Well, sir, they were, and there was a combination. Some of it was, before we started the site visits, we had individuals, private individuals, that we were wanting to get trained to assist with those. Part of the issue was finding the time that we could pull all those individuals to get the training. Mr. Burkhart had some training materials that he wanted to update, and there was some delay in getting those training materials. And quite frankly, some of it was just trying to get some of them scheduled. So yes, I would have liked to have begun earlier. Unfortunately, for various reasons, we were not able to. We did start with, the first focus group was about 6 weeks ago. But we are in full swing, and we are making a full court press. We're doing site visits every single day next week with these companies.
Well, I'm looking forward to a detailed report on what we get back from, I'm assuming, I hope we're meeting with all the businesses in the industrial park, the ones that are bringing, we can get all the retail jobs we want. But as Dale alludes to all the time, he wants good paying jobs. I mean, the industrial businesses are the ones that are bringing those good paying jobs. So I look forward to seeing detailed reports from hopefully every industrial type business that we have in the city.
Well, sir, I can tell you that you will see an aggregate report. You will not see individual reports from each business that we meet with. Because some of the information we discuss is confidential, and one of the kind of promises we make going into this is that that information will not be shared except in an aggregate form. So combined, you will get that information, but quite frankly, if you said, can you show me the information that you got from a company, that I would not be able to share.
Got a question. On Kinsey Road, I saw McAfee's.
McAfee's, yes.
McAfee's, I'm sorry. Is that city or is that township right there?
It's just a township.
Yeah, I believe that building is actually in the
I
township.
didn't know that. Sorry, brought revenue. And then, do we have anything going on yet? Simon Kenton, there was a little bit of interest there. Is that still in the air?
Well, we had I thought, a pretty good conversation going with Green Metropolitan Housing, and that opportunity, I think, is probably going to fall through for the time being. The key problem there being one of their specific needs that they had hoped to address was more space for their maintenance equipment and materials. And I think after talking with the architect that they had, that they have under contract, they felt that types of modifications that they would need to be done would be more cost effectively done by building additional structure onto the building. And I think in terms of dollars and cents, that didn't make sense. We still have an open conversation going, actually with Jeremiah Tree and a number of the other ministries. The key issue there is a funding issue. And had an interesting conversation just yesterday about the possibility of looking at utilization of grant resources, perhaps CDBG, for a project related to that. So it's something we'll look into a little bit more. We have put together some additional marketing materials that we're hoping to put out there. I think we need to be more aggressive in what we're putting out there. Would still love to find some type of business interest to go there, if at all possible, given what the zoning allows. But at this point, I think we'll settle for whatever is amenable and would work in the space.
Councilman Lauterbach.
We had an email on this later last week, I think, but my personal opinion that for this city to capitalize on the growth in our region, which is along 675, and that we as a state have to improve our access to that along US 35. I don't know what you need, city manager's office, after your email, if you got input from all the council, or what, is there something we can provide to him if we want to continue to get a more formal stance on that project?
If I may, I heard back from a couple of you, and just so that our television audience gets a sense, there is a project that has been proposed and funding has been lined up throughout the Ohio Department of Transportation that would provide improvements to the 35 corridor just west of the city that would make that a limited access throughway and provide some additional improvements, access roads for the businesses out there. Our feeling, economic development in our office, others, I think with Greene County development, feel that is a tremendous opportunity for the city of Xenia because it improves the overall transportation access for the goods and services in our community, and also I think improves property values of the existing properties along the 35 corridor. I think it's something that the city should advocate for. You do have an effort afoot by the businesses out there in conjunction to try to lobby to have that plan altered. What I would like to hear before taking a more vocal political stand on the issue and lobbying our state representatives is a consensus from council that that's what you want us to do.
I think you ought to pass a resolution, personally.
Agreed.
Councilman Lauterbach.
On those same lines, for full disclosure, I'm on the board of directors at MVRPC, and I talked to the CEO last week, and he would like to see a resolution come from this body. You know what you have is a political battle now. You've got the big car companies out there. A couple of them, Langs and Roberts Olds, left Xenia to begin with. So don't have a whole lot of compassion for them. But you've got the big car companies out there lobbying. They've got some high-priced lawyers lobbying again in opposition to the project. And I would like to see this council have a resolution in support of it because it would do nothing but help the city of Xenia.
Consensus view.
I agree completely, because if you're going to purchase a car, you're going to purchase a car. And if you have to go off the beaten trail to get to the car dealership to get the best price, you're going to make that effort. You know, it's all about dollars and cents in the end. So I think that we should move forward with that resolution. I think it would be a huge asset to the city of Xenia.
Others? Councilman?
I know you had alluded to us getting more info on economic development in September. Can we get, the goals and objectives of our economic development department so that when we have these quarterly updates, we can actually look at, what our goals and objectives were and did we meet them?
Yeah, there are two real products that we can provide to council that would sort of, you've seen both of them. We do annually publish our performance objectives as part of the budget, so that would be some guiding criteria that would be out there on an annual basis. And then the other document that we're really utilizing right now to focus our efforts is the X-Plan. And of course, we've derived, some sort of goals and objective sheets from the X-Plan. What I hope to provide later in the summer here is some recommendations that take a lot of those things and talk about programmatically and resource-wise what steps we are recommending that we think are necessary in order to attack those goals more comprehensively. I share a lot of your concerns. I think one reality check that we all have to keep in mind is that we are very administratively resource limited. You know, we've got the economic development director, we've got our neighborhood programs specialist, and then we've got a secretary. So additional reports that we provide, you know, whatever it is we're doing, it's all competing for time. And I think in prior discussions, that's why we've wanted to get additional focus from the city manager's office, wanted to have the city planner and city engineer involved in some of the work that we're doing to try to distribute that load. A good example, Councilman Kalp talked about H&A project. I really am not sure who we would have delegated that project to. I mean, there really would not be a natural successor to pick that project up, just because we have such thin lines in so many of our departments, in particular in that one. So again, one of the things we want to do is come back and say, okay, council has expressed a willingness to provide more resources to target our economic development efforts. How best do we utilize those resources to build capacity and hopefully attach to that some measurement so that we can really look at, are we being successful in these areas, or should we look in a different direction?
Councilman.
You know, along those same lines, we are talking about an $8 million project for a city hall and renovation of this building. What's our present budget for economic development? 200,000?
Roughly.
All funds considered, probably.
Just think what this city could do if we up that budget to $1 million. Since we've got $8 million there floating around, maybe 2 or 3 more million to pave some of the streets that citizens want. I mean, I get, and these reports, to be quite honest with you, the X-Plan, all these reports is just fluff, dog and pony shows. I want to see some results. What we need in this town is jobs. What about super value? Where are we at with super value? Can anybody answer? With 300 jobs left super value, are we pursuing another company to go out there?
We're working with the building owner, yes.
You're working with the building owner.
Yes, sir.
And how aggressive are you working with the building owner?
And in fact, I had contact with him today.
And you have nothing to report to us?
Well, sir, understand that this is a public venue, and there's a lot of things that unfortunately I do or that happens in our office that we can't really discuss publicly.
Well, I represent the public. I get elected by the people out there, and I think the public has a right to know
Well,
why we have 0% economic development in our city. That's exactly where we're at. And let the chips fall where they may. We don't have economic development. This council, at the beginning of the year, made economic development our #1 priority. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
What have you got? Where are we at? We're in July. What do we got to show for it? Nothing.
Councilman, I would suggest that our city is doing what it can. Economic development is much like 2 people meeting on the street. One extends a hand to another. Another can choose to take that hand and shake it, walk by, not do anything whatsoever. What I would suggest is, and I do appreciate the difficulties that are in front of our department in terms of providing exacting specifications in a public setting. I am supportive of the approach that the city manager and staff are taking on that. But I do believe that they are, and perhaps as we've heard from our city manager, they need to be perhaps even more aggressive. But you can only shake as many hands as come into your grasp.
That's your opinion, sir.
That's my opinion.
I gave you my opinion. I've been on this council for 7 years. I haven't seen any economic growth. The population in Xenia is 0. People don't want to come to Xenia. Let's face the facts. Why do we put our head in the sand and say, oh, everything's fine in Xenia? It isn't. We need jobs in Xenia. We don't need an $8 million city hall. We don't need all this other stuff. We need jobs in Xenia. If you come here, and I would love it if you come in and, hey, we've got 300 jobs coming to the super value. We've got a glass factory, 800 jobs coming. You know, instead of all these cities getting all these jobs, Payless Shoe, Walmart, all these cities getting all these good paying jobs, we have nothing. And I'm tired of sitting back and listening to the X plans and this plan and that plan. It's time we be honest with the people.
Mr. Vice President.
How much is the community gain contract?
A little over 100 grand. A little under 100 grand.
You have to start adding things up. There's money being spent, not nearly enough, but there's more than just a parallel department being spent. This council approved that contract, and we're slowly getting information back. I think I'm unhappy about the speed, but in general, if we spend some time in studying other communities, like I work in Moraine, I've followed that development there closely. What you learn is the city governments are actually doing very little. It's the regional effort to the Dayton Development Coalition, through private investors, to the developers themselves who are spending the time and resources to develop those properties. City governments come in after the fact by offering tax incentives after they're interested in developing here, and we can't seem to get to that point.
Well, we come in before the fact in providing the information that companies need. And it can be very comprehensive information, from labor market information to utilities to cost of doing business. So from that standpoint, we do come in up front. Typically in those deals, though, we are working either through the state or through the development coalition or through those building owners. They tend to be very protective of the clients that they work with. We get these project leads. It's Project Aztec. I have absolutely no idea whatsoever what company Project Aztec is working with, and that is by design. Again, to protect those companies so they're not inundated with inquiries and stuff. They want to be able to manage that process. So what we need to do is make sure that we have those.
I mean, do you know what Project Aztec even is?
It is a search for a particular size building. I believe in that case it was for a call center. But that's the only kind of information we're given, is that we have a building that they need a warehouse, or they need a call center, or they're looking for a food manufacturing facility. That's as much detail as we typically get.
But I just want to point out, cities like Clayton, seeing the growth in Moraine, they do not have $1 million economic development budgets.
No, they
not
do
even
not.
where they're actually right in line with ours. I know Moraine is, and they're seeing quite a bit of growth today. It's because the people who own the properties are the ones investing the money and developing it, and I hope that we see more effort out of the group with Super Value, who's had very positive results.
Do we reach out to, like in the site visits, are we reaching out to businesses that say are in Xenia Township?
I do not specifically talk to them. My counterpart at the county will talk to them, with a few exceptions. For example, the Bob Evans plant technically is in Xenia Township. I can tell you that when we visit them, and just last summer, we went up to Columbus and visited with the president of Bob Evans Foods. We had the county there, the city was there, actually the township was not. So some of it depends on the size of the company.
I guess what I'm getting at, Nationwide Biweekly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a client of mine. They're in the township technically.
Yes, sir.
But would it be worth our while to do a site visit on Nationwide Biweekly? I mean, a lot of their employees live in the city. They've got 125 or 30 employees, maybe even 140 now. I mean, when you look at Xenia, I mean, that's one of our largest employers in the Xenia area. But maybe there's things that they could use that the city perhaps could provide them if they were annexed into the city. And one that comes to the top of my list is water. I mean, I see a water truck dumping water in a cistern over there. So
On at least a
obviously,
weekly basis, yes.
obviously, they could use some city water, and we've got city water right across the street. So perhaps, that's a business that if we could provide them a service they would want to annex into the city.
Why would they want to pay a 2.25% income tax, one of the highest in the state?
I don't-
Really?
I-
We
I
got
don't-
one,
I don't-
really.
I don't have an answer for that.
I've
I'm
been
not-
trying to get our income tax reduced for how long?
I understand.
But yet now we want to, instead of reducing our income tax, we're going to spend $8 million for a new city hall. It goes in circles. Is anybody listening to me?
No, I'm listening to you.
You need to do some research. I talk to the people biweekly. You know why they located outside the city? Our city income tax. It's a no-brainer. That's why Bob Evans located. They don't want to pay 2.25% city income tax.
Well, I mean,
In fairness, both of those entities were there when our income tax rate was how much?
How much?
Okay.
For the last increase, we were 1.75.
But I mean, they were even there before that.
yeah, but
Bob Evans has
either
been
way,
there
I
for
mean,
much longer than
sometimes,
that, yes.
sometimes situations change. I mean, if that's the reason, if that's the reason why Nationwide Biweekly says if the number one reason they didn't want to be in the city of Xenia was the city income tax, I'd like to know that. And if there's another business on the north side of town, the number one reason they didn't locate inside the city limits was because of the income tax, I'd like to know that. Because then we, as a body, can say, you know what, we got a problem. That's why businesses aren't coming to our city, because of our city income tax. We need to address that problem. But we're not going to know that if we're not meeting with some of these other businesses that aren't necessarily right in the city. I mean, you know, Nationwide Biweekly, probably half their employees live in our city limits. I mean, it's just, you know, I'm just looking big picture. I mean, we've got to do more and get more answers than what we've gotten in the past.
Thank you, Councilman.
We talked about adopting a resolution.
I was
about
just
35.
coming back
Okay.
to that, actually.
Because I really think that really, our
That can
highway
be a
access
specific
is-
action for us
yeah,
tonight.
Is a issue.
I believe I've heard a consensus of council around me that we would like for city and law department to prepare a resolution supporting the limited access highway project. Please have that ready for us at our next meeting, our first meeting in August, please. Any other summation comments for our economic development?
I just have one clarification. Our tax incentive program, what does their payroll have to be to take advantage of that?
$1 million.
Okay. Any other? Thank you
And
very much.
that's $1 million in new payroll, not existing.
Thank you very much, Steve. At this point in our meeting this evening, we have a public hearing. This is on electric aggregation, a subject that we have discussed on numerous occasions at council meeting. And we will conduct a public hearing momentarily, but would invite the city manager and the representative to speak about the program first, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilors, just a few opening comments. Our viewers will recall that in November of 2003, voters of the city did approve electric power aggregation as permitted under deregulation of Ohio's public utilities. Since that vote, the city has executed an agreement with strategic aggregation consultants to provide a contract for electric aggregation services. SAC has assisted the city in developing our plan of operation and governance for the proposed electric aggregation program. And the plan as submitted tonight details the roles and responsibilities of the city and the electric provider, as well as rights and responsibilities of local aggregation program members, our local consumers. The plan outlines the aggregation program operations and provides detailed processes for functions such as opting in and opting out of the program and general customer service requirements of the electric provider. With tonight's public hearing, the City Council will have met the requirement to conduct the public hearings on the plan of operation and governance. The next step in this process is to adopt the resolution of in support of the plan of operation and governance. Once successfully implemented, our aggregation program will provide local residential consumers and small businesses with the opportunity to reduce electric bills, the purchasing power of our aggregate electric demand, and staff request at least introduction of the resolution tonight, if not a proposal for emergency passage of the resolution.
Thank you very much. Ma'am, would you care to add any comments to that introduction?
I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have on
Are there any questions from my colleagues before we open the public hearing? Councilman?
Just ballpark, how much will this save the average citizen?
Ma'am, could you come to the podium, please? Thank you.
Anywhere from $30 to $100 a year. It just depends on what the bids come in at. So we'll have to give you that report after we do the RFP.
30 to 100?
Dollars a year.
Do you have a percentage-wise? Percentage, 30 to 100 of what, on my electric bill?
Yes, off of your electric bill for the whole year. So divide that by 12, you know.
What's your bill?
So it could be if you had a $100 per month on average electric bill, it could be as much as a 12th, or
Right.
as little as a quarter of that.
A quarter, right.
Okay, I heard initially when we started talking about this as much as 25%, that doesn't,
Well, it could be. I'd rather estimate low and then come in with a great price. I can't speak to what the suppliers are going to come in with. I have spoken to 4 potential suppliers, and we're lining them up so that they're aware that the RFP is coming out and are going to be ready to be as aggressive as they possibly can be.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before I open the public hearing, please? Seeing none, thank you very much, ma'am. At this point, I will open the public hearing on electric aggregation and would invite anyone who is for this particular program to come forward and speak to the Xenia City Council this evening. Please provide us your name and address. Limit your comments 2 to 3 minutes, please. Seeing none, if there's anyone who would care to speak against this electric aggregation, please step to the podium, provide us your name and address. Limit your comments 2 to 3 minutes. Seeing none, if there is anyone present who would like to speak neither for nor against this electric aggregation program, please step to the podium, provide us your name and address. Seeing none, at this point I will close the public hearing, and I have had some conversation with the city manager and others, and in looking at the council's next meeting, which is 3 weeks from this evening, and in consideration that our progress forward to actually accomplishing this task is contingent upon the passage of our resolution, I would respectfully ask my colleagues for a motion as an emergency to pass this particular issue this evening to accelerate the schedule.
I would like to make a motion to pass this issue. Thank you.
As an emergency?
As an emergency.
Thank you. Moved by Councilwoman Mills. A second, please.
Second.
Second by the mayor. Any discussion or question on the motion before us? Mr. Vice President.
So approving this tonight, what we're approving is going the next step, which was contracting with the consultant, going out to bid.
Well, the plan of governance is an approval by council. It's a requirement under the regulations adopted by the Public Utilities Commission. So in order for the plan to be ultimately approved by the PUCO, council will have to approve it first. That plan has to be approved in order for us to then ultimately be able to go out and to do that bid process. Because this outlines a lot of the requirements of the ultimately successful bidder and so forth, the plan has to be adopted in place.
And then further actions from the council would be we would approve those contracts in the future? Or?
Ultimately, once we go through the bidding process and a recommended bidder is identified, we would bring that back to council approval, and I think that's essentially the last step in the process, more or less, in order to ultimately facilitate the new aggregation program.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilman.
What do you foresee as being the timeline on that?
We're projecting, if this would hold true and this additional 3 weeks of help, we're looking at having the arrangement in place by December, I think for the December billing cycle of this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, please? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaut.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Bayless.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. At this time, we have an opportunity for audience comments. If anyone would care to come and address the Xenia City Council on a topic this evening, if you would please come to the podium, provide us your name and address, limit your comments 3 to 4 minutes, please. Seeing none, we'll move to our next item, which is reports of committees. Councilman Long, please, Planning and Zoning.
Thank you. The Xenia Planning and Zoning Commission met on July 3rd in these chambers. They had one item on the agenda, which they approved a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a detached garage at 321 East 2nd Street, filed by the occupant of the home who wished just to demolish an unsafe garage and recover that green space in their yard. That is all.
Thank you very much. Anything for Planning and Zoning, and Councilman Long, please. Seeing none, Councilman Lauterbach, MVRPC, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The July meeting was canceled.
Thank you. Anything for Councilman Lauterbach and MVRPC at this time? Seeing none, items from City Council and Mayor. Is there anything that any of us would need to bring to the body for good of the order, please? Mr. Vice President.
Just one on, I spoke with just a couple before this meeting. I spoke with Brent before this meeting about the Greene County, our participation in Greene County Regional Planning Commission, and that the fees have increased this year and will most likely continue to increase as long as the current commissioners sit in office. I would request that each one of the council members kind of get a hold of Brent and maybe learn a little bit more about that, because my recommendation is going to be that we no longer take part in that regional planning commission, that we are not getting any value to nearly $4,500 in fees we're spending per year to take part. But before I bring anything formal back, I want to make sure everyone has a chance to meet with him. But I'm sure he can probably send out some emails to give you some more detail on that. But John had any comments on that?
Yeah, and Councilman Long and I discussed it before the meeting, and I'm in 100% agreement with Councilman Long. Beaver Creek and Fairborn have already withdrawn from that organization, and I think we should probably follow their lead.
Any other comments or items to bring forward, please? Council.
Since we're getting through the electrical aggregation, and I've talked to you in the past, is it a possibility to have natural gas aggregation?
It is. Voters actually have already approved the aggregation for natural gas in the city of Xenia. Our current consultant is also licensed to be able to provide that service as well. What we talked about in moving into the electric aggregation was, let's get through that, let's see how it goes, and let's look at the market relative to the natural gas issue. If there appears like there's an opportunity to provide savings for our residents and small businesses, then absolutely, I think it's something we'll bring back to council to get a directive to move forward to look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, please? Seeing none, reports of city offices. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Thank you, Mr. President and council members. Get that right. Robust agenda tonight, and before I start, I wanted to acknowledge something, and I think it's important to acknowledge it. A lot of our items tonight are emergencies, and I'm not particularly thrilled by that. Some of these were somewhat unavoidable due to late contact. For example, the one from ODOT didn't have a lot of turnaround time, and because our charter requires the two readings, if we want to meet some of those deadlines, oftentimes we'll have to do these as an emergency. Nonetheless, all these emergencies is not good governance. I think we need to be more timely in our preparation, and that is something I will be discussing with the staff. So again, I want to acknowledge that, and it's not a good thing, and we'll continue to work to improve that. Having said that, the first item this evening is a request for an emergency ordinance for supplemental appropriations. With our new, more austere budgeting practices, the need for supplemental appropriations around this time of year is a general expectation. As in the prior couple of years, some unexpected issues have arisen for which we do not have contingency funds budgeted. Several main issues that are driving these supplemental appropriation needs include the state auditor taking over our annual audit, which has taken more time than they originally indicated, thus costing us more in audit fees. In fact, that's quite a few of the lines. Additional water and sewer line work in the community this past winter, more than we had initially anticipated, and thus it's created a need for more materials. The wetter than average summer, extending our weed control program needs similar to last year, and an unplanned project to slipline a storm sewer on the Reese Drive. Again, most of these are, fairly easily explainable if you have any specific questions, but again, staff requests the appropriation as an emergency in order to meet the impending operating expenses that several of these present.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, as an emergency?
So moved, Mr. President.
Moved by Councilman Lauterbach. Second, please.
Second.
Second by the Vice President. Any discussion or question on this motion, please? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaup.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Balis.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Council authorized the use of CDBG funds for exterior rehab work at Xenia Station facility, which included replacement of exterior doors here with this last round of CDBG funding. Staff had planned to reuse the original door hardware as part of the replacement of these, but the installation attempts that we tried, in those attempts we observed unanticipated problems with the alignment of the doorknobs and the locking systems, to the point that it's created a safety and accessibility issue that we think needs to be corrected. Therefore, staff is recommending that we instead replace the hardware using systems that would be integrated into our simplex security system that we utilize here at City Hall. We're requesting emergency ordinance for an amount of $2,991 in order to expedite the work and get that project completed in its totality at Xenia Station.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, as an emergency?
So moved, emergency.
Moved by the Vice President. Second, please.
Second.
Second by the Mayor. Any discussion or question on this motion, please? Mr. Vice President.
I just want to note that the work being done there looks wonderful.
Yes.
Rehabbing all that wood.
Any other discussion or question, please? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaup.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Balis.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
This next item is a little bit long and a little bit complicated, so bear with me here as I provide some oversight or some overview on it. The third item requests 3 separate actions to allow us to move forward with needed maintenance for the industrial park water tower. Industry best practices and EPA requirements for maintenance of potable water storage appurtenances necessitate periodic inspection and rehabilitation. As such, we are overdue for maintenance and repainting of the industrial park water tower and have been planning for this project in our 5-year CIP as approved by City Council. In researching the most cost-effective approaches, staff determined that rolling together the upfront inspection, repair, repainting cost with an overall 5-year inspection and maintenance program and the fees associated with that would provide us the best overall value. In order to move forward with this project as detailed in the bid specifications, it would be necessary then to appropriate additional funds totaling $575,623 to cover the total cost of the proposed contract. Additionally, the originally budgeted amount of $130,000 needs to be transferred to a more appropriate capital improvement line from contractual services. Essentially, it was in the wrong line to begin with. These actions are requested as an emergency. Staff subsequently recommends council award a 5-year contract and issue a purchase order to Utility Service Company Incorporated for a not-to-exceed amount of $696,523. This contract includes internal and external evaluation, corrective measures, paint removal and repainting, construction and installation of the communications corral, as well as cost for preventative maintenance functions in the out years of the 5-year contract. An additional component of the overall project is to address issues arising from the location of various microwave communication units which are mounted on the tower. Upon removal and repainting, upon assessment, we have determined that the equipment will need to be completely taken down for the paint removal and repainting. It will need to be relocated to a temporary private tower location, and that upon reinstallation, it will need to be mounted on a new microwave antenna array, a corral on the top of the tower. To complete this portion of the overall project, staff is recommending we continue to work with our local vendor, WS Electronics, who has for years provided exclusive service to the city for these matters. Staff therefore recommends council adopt as an emergency an ordinance to waive competitive bidding for the communication services of removal, relocation, and reinstallation of all the microwave systems and antennae and communication equipment from the tower and issue a purchase order to WS Electronics in an amount not to exceed $80,000. I have one other thing that I wanted to pass around. Didn't get this in time to get it into the agenda, but I want to make, it may seem like a little issue, but I want to make sure that there will be no issues with this. This is a rendering of what the repainted tower would look like. We are proposing utilization of the city's logo. As it's rendered here, it includes the tagline. If you look at or recall the recommendation from GAIN, they recommended sticking with the logo, but perhaps scaling back the utilization of the tagline. So what we're recommending is use of the logo without the tagline. That'll give us the flexibility if we decide to change that portion of it in the future. But again, before moving forward and doing the repainting, I want to be sure and be clear with council that you're okay with the utilization of this brand identity as it currently exists.
Still looks like a peach.
Thank you very much. Going with the city manager's first, or excuse me, with his last observation, is there any thought or concern or objection to the proposed rendering?
So it'd look like this, take vivid history, vibrant
Correct.
future off.
Yes, yes, sir.
I'm okay with that.
We're voting to take this off?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Just leave, just the logo and Xenia? Yeah.
I'm going to have to concur with Pat Belt.
So, Mr. City Manager, you have a consensus on that particular issue?
Thank you.
And at this point in time, I will ask for an emergency motion for the first item,
So moved.
moved by Councilman Lauterbach. And a second, please.
Second.
Second by the mayor. Any discussion or question on our first motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaut.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Bayless.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Now a simple motion, please, to award the 5-year contract for painting, professional maintenance, and asset management.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Mills. Second, please. Second by the Vice President. Any discussion or question on this motion?
Does that price fall in line with what you're
The
getting?
reason we went this route is because overall it provided us a cost savings by incorporating that longer-term maintenance approach.
Any other discussion or question, please? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaut.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Bayless.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
And finally, another emergency motion, please, for our third item.
So moved, Mr. President.
Moved by Councilman Lauterbach. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Mills. Any discussion or question on this motion? Councilman.
Thank you very much. I know we've talked about radios till we're blue in the face, but these antennas on top of there that WS maintains, we're going to continue using those into the future?
Good question. As part of this project, I've done a little bit of looking into the genesis of that arrangement. Most of that equipment is not ours. It is currently being housed on our tower free of charge. There's no lease arrangement with the entities who own or utilize them, and they've provided very little maintenance and are not contributing to this overall project. I've talked with the police chief, and my directive to him was that we need to draft some MOUs with the different jurisdictions who are utilizing that equipment, and that we need to have some serious discussions to, at minimum, eliminate any financial liability we have of that equipment, if not looking at some type of lease arrangement for housing that equipment on our tower, because while it is working in conjunction with our dispatch operations, it is not necessarily directly benefiting our citizens, and it is reducing an opportunity that we would potentially have otherwise of utilizing that tower space for lease purposes. So I don't know exactly how all of this evolved over time. In fact, I have a meeting next week with representatives from Beaver Creek Township who seem to be upset with the direction we're moving in on this matter, and we'll be quite candid with them in terms of the direction that we're going to move, whether they like it or not. So.
Well, I mean, me as a council person, I mean, I know I personally have talked to the police chief about it, and the city manager about it, and about the maintenance that we incur as the city that we are currently not being reimbursed for. So right here's a perfect example of a cost that we're bearing for everyone else. So I'm in full support of renegotiation of those contracts to get the other entities to pay their fair share. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have something, Mr. Vice President?
So we don't own the equipment?
Not all
And
of
there's
it,
no,
It's microwave repeater equipment.
Is that
some of it's backup equipment for some of the adjoining jurisdictions.
and most of that's currently being maintained by WS? That's why we're deciding not to go out for competitive bid?
Correct. In fact, I think all of the equipment on there was installed, and any maintenance that has been done over the years has been done by WS. And additionally, we're utilizing their tower to relocate, because it is equipment that needs to remain active during this period of work at the tower. So we're utilizing the tower that WS has on an interim basis, and he's really got the only tower that we could easily access in the area.
Okay.
Any other question or discussion, please? Roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaup.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Balis.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
The next item this evening, the Ohio Department of Transportation is scheduled to initiate a signage upgrade project on many U.S. and state routes throughout the state of Ohio. Yet this year, ODOT is planning to upgrade various signs along US 35 within the city of Xenia. There's no cost to local jurisdictions for this project. As a formality, the Department of Transportation has requested that the affected jurisdictions adopt legislation that authorizes these upgrades within communities such as Xenia. Attached is a standard consent and cooperation agreement from ODOT that is required to be adopted by this body prior to any work being completed by the state of Ohio. Because the attached consent and cooperation agreement must be completed by the city prior to ODOT selling the project on August 21st, 2014, and because ODOT has requested that the signed documents be received by August 11th of this year, engineering staff is requesting that the attached legislation be adopted on an emergency basis.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, as an emergency?
So moved as an emergency, Mr. President.
Moved by Councilman Kaup. Second, please.
I'll second.
Second by the Vice President. Any discussion or question on this motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaup.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Balis.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Next item this evening, staff is requesting passage of an emergency resolution authorizing a then and now payment to the Greene County Animal Control in the amount of $8,400. Under the former city manager, steps were taken to reevaluate the contractual arrangement with Greene County Animal Control for services related to feral cats. A protracted negotiation process between the city and the agency extended into early of this year, during which time the city withheld payment of invoices for the third and fourth quarters of 2013. At this time, it is appropriate for the city to move forward with payment of these invoices from 2013, and since these expenses had already been billed without budgeted funds available, it was necessary for City Council to approve a resolution authorizing a then and now payment. Staff is requesting this resolution be approved as an emergency to expedite payment. Additionally, I want to inform council that our staff is working with the city manager and staff from the city of Fairborn, who share some similar concerns with Greene County Animal Control on both service and fee inconsistencies. We have a joint meeting scheduled with the county representatives to address these matters, and upon the conclusion of that meeting, I will certainly give council an update on where we're at and what that fee structure looks like moving forward into the future.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, as an emergency?
So moved.
Moved by the Vice President. Second, please.
Second.
Second by the Mayor. Any discussion or question on this motion? Mr. Vice President.
Not a question, but this community needs to know that we spend tens upon tens, I mean, well over $70-something thousand, maybe even more than that, a year on maintaining animals. It's either skunks or cats or dogs or roadkill. But I would bet between the county contract and our private contract, it's well over 75, I can
Probably
imagine.
75 to 80,000 a year, and that doesn't count any staff time that we would spend picking up the roadkill, because that's a service we are now maintaining in-house.
It's phenomenal. This is phenomenal.
Okay, so if I have a problem with an animal and I go to Greene County Animal Control, I live in the city, we are referred to the third party then?
If you have an issue with an animal, if it's a vicious dog and it's an emergent issue, you should call 911. And between the Xenia Police Division and Animal Control, they will be dispatched to address the issue. If it's an issue with a cat or some other wild animal, skunks, something like that, we would instruct people to call the city manager's office. We actually have an existing contractual arrangement with a firm who will come out. They are licensed by the state of Ohio to collect those animals and to then deal with them appropriately. Issues with cats are dealt with a little bit separately under Ohio law. The animal control still has a responsibility with that, so our animal control, our hired individual would take then the cats to the county. But therein lies the problem, because the city of Xenia is being charged $60 for a cat, and other communities are being charged half or substantially less. Let's put it that way. So again, the issue is that, and this is what Jim was working on in much frustration, I can tell you, trying to bring some consistency to those fees and better overall services.
Thank you. Any other discussion or question, please? Roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Cow.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Bayless.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Final item tonight, under Ohio's collective bargaining laws, the city must negotiate in good faith with public safety units which have opted to unionize. The city's police officers, police sergeants, police captains, and 911 dispatch operators are all recognized bargaining units. Current contracts with these bargains all expire late this summer or early fall, and so negotiations for successor contracts was initiated earlier this summer after consultation with and direction provided by City Council. Successful negotiations have been conducted and tentative agreements have been reached with all 4 units. The membership of the 4 separate units have conducted separate ratification votes. The terms and conditions agreed to in the interest-based bargaining negotiations resulted in ratification of all 4 tentative agreements. The matter now rests before City Council for approval. Council's rejection of the terms of these agreements as presented will return all parties to the bargaining process and potentially to fact-finding and binding conciliation. Council's approval will accept the contracts and close negotiations. As discussed with Council previously, staff has met the mandates established by the body and have achieved strategic goals set forth for these negotiations. While never perfect, staff believes the terms and conditions of the proposed tentative agreements are fair and satisfy the interests of the city while respecting the needs of the employee groups. We respectfully recommend approval.
Thank you. Mr. Law Director, do we need separate motions on this or a collective motion?
I would do separate in case
Thank
there's
you.
individuals that want to approve some and not in favor of others.
Thank you. May I have a motion then to approve the terms and conditions of the proposed contract for the officers, please?
So moved, Mr. President.
Moved by Councilman Lauterbach. Second, please.
Second.
Second by the Vice President. Any discussion or question on the contract for the officers? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Cow.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Bayless.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
May I have a motion now, please, to approve the terms and conditions of the contract for the sergeants?
So moved.
Moved by the mayor. Second, please.
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Smith. Any discussion or question on this motion? Councilman.
I'm voting no, and I'm going to tell the public why. Our staff did a survey of comparable salaries. Let's talk about the sergeants now. I'll talk about the captains in a minute. Xenia was second, only behind Miamisburg. The average gross wage of a sergeant, $96,972.87. That's gross wages. Does that not include benefits? This is the gross wages for the year ending 2013. I won't mention any names, but I'll read you the amounts. Police sergeant, $103,147. Police sergeant, $101,451. Police sergeant, $97,878. Police sergeant, $96,475. Police sergeant, $96,475. They make more than the police captain. They make more than the finance director. They make more than our fire chief. Somehow, I know that how the disparity came within the captains, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but somehow we have a gross inequity between the police sergeants, police captains, and the policemen on the street. So again, these wages does not include their benefits, which you can add $25,000 to $30,000. I'm voting against it because I don't think our negotiating team listened to council when we gave them directives, and in my opinion, came back with a poor contract. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion or question on the contracts for the sergeants, please? Councilman Cow.
Thank you very much. I too plan on voting no on the sergeants and captains contracts. Councilman Lauterbach and I have discussed it, and I've discussed it till I've blue in the face, the disparity, the gap between the officers on the street, the sergeants, and then it's another 21% increase gap between sergeants and captains. We're told that gap is coming down, but yet they're still receiving benefits, and I don't think we're going to see that gap coming down in the next 3 years at least. So therefore, I have nothing against our captains, nothing against our sergeants. I believe we have fine officers, but at what point does city and municipal governments say, how much can we pay a captain on the police force? How much can we pay a sergeant on the police force? And, the numbers that our HR department have provided us, show that we hear that term all the time. We have to pay good wages to retain good employees. Our wages in the police division are some of the highest wages in the Miami Valley. So I believe we do need to address those issues. I personally would not want to be the police chief in this city. I don't believe any subordinate should make less than their manager. And right now, a majority of our sergeants and captains are making more than our own police chief. So I feel bad for our police chief. But for those reasons, I can't support those two contracts either. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other discussion or question on the motion, please? See, Mayor.
I just want to say, realizing that there is a discrepancy, I appreciate the efforts of the negotiating team to try and close that gap, realizing it will take some time, but to me, that was the best effort and best way to go about it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, please? I would add that in our executive session where we discussed this, the discussions, as you can probably tell from our conversation here, was wide-ranging. I believe that our negotiating team and the police sergeants, captains, officers, and communication officers negotiated in good faith, and we found a successful common ground that was fair to all parties, as our city manager had stated. So I will be voting yes. Any further discussion, please? Roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaup.
No.
Councilman Lauterbach.
No.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Bayless.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Now, a motion, please, to approve the terms and conditions of the contract for the captains.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Mills. Second, please.
I'll second.
Second by the Vice President. Any discussion or question on this motion, please? Councilman Lauterbach.
Once again, let me read you the salaries of captains. Number 2 in the city, he's no longer with us. He's moved to another city. But number 2, as far as salary in the city, $106,309. Next one's $102,646. Next is $99,465. Also, there's a little caveat here that I asked the police chief. I wish he was here tonight. I asked him in a meeting, but he ran around the barn with me. So I'd like to ask the city manager, in the past, besides their regular increase, do police captains, are they eligible for a 5% additional income raise a year? Yes or no? That's a yes or no
Yes,
question.
but it's not a
Yeah,
raise.
yes, it is.
It's
Yes, it is.
It's a part of the overall.
Let me explain to the public. The captains, as in previous contracts, are eligible for an additional 5% raise, which they always get, based on job performance. That in any other municipality, that would be part of their regular job. We gave the bargaining team directives. We wanted to see that 5% a year. They got a 1.5% increase for 3 years. But with the 5%, that makes them eligible for a 6.5% increase. Isn't that not a true statement? Brent?
What you have to look at, you can't look
No,
at
no, no,
just
no,
the
you
wages.
don't give me the round the barn thing like the police chief. I talked to Ryan Duke, and I asked him point blank, is it not true that they get an additional 5% plus their 1.5% increase for the next 3 years? That's a simple question. Yes or no?
Let me handle that,
That is a
Mr.
simple
City Manager.
question, but it is not a
Why
complete
should you
statement.
handle
City
it?
Manager.
I'm asking the city manager, not you.
I was in the session as well, and as I recall, the police chief informed us that there is a 5% plus rating. That plus rating is for specific duties that each of our captains assume.
Correct.
And that at the present time, 2 of the 3 will be eligible this year, and the third one is working towards a number of professional development and education requirements that we put upon them before they would be eligible for such a benefit.
But
Is that not correct,
but the yes or
City
no
Manager?
answer is yes, they're eligible for a 5% increase for the next 3 years. Is that a yes? Is that yes or no?
It's not an increase. It is a plus rating. It is not a raise as you've characterized it. And I would look at it as if this was in place last year, the 1.5% that is this year is merely a 1.5%, as the 5% is common across both. So there is no 6.5% this year as opposed to last.
Yes, there is. And please, I mean, everybody's dancing around the barn. The facts are, we've got newspapers here, check it out. The captains are eligible for a 1.5% raise this year with a possibility of another 5%. You was in negotiations, is that true or not?
Please come to the podium.
I mean, please, it's just a yes or no answer. I don't have to know the disparity between, all I want to know is are they eligible for 5%? Let's take this year, 5% plus 1.5%. Is that true?
The 5%'s a professional development, 5% over their gross wages, correct?
Right.
That they're eligible for.
Correct. So
Right.
therefore, because they were, I think where we're getting confused is therefore because they already got the 5% last year, you're saying they're only getting 1.5% this year. But they got the 5% because they have professional development.
Right.
Some things, professional development could be getting their master's degree, going to the FBI Academy. Is it a fair statement to say that we have street officers that have those same requirements or those same qualifications that would qualify for that professional development 5%?
If that was in their contract, but it's
If it
not.
was in their contract, but I'm just saying, so therefore we have officers that have done that on their own without being paid 5% to do it to better themselves.
I can't speak to those specific things, but I'm sure that they have done additional training and in other words, I don't know that there are any officers with a master's degree, or specifically if they've attended the FBI Academy, there may well be, but I would probably agree with you that they have done things in the pursuit of
I agree.
professional development.
I agree, and in many industries, you have continuing education that you're required to do as an individual to hold your
We have other staff
profession.
members in the city that are required to keep their certifications and
Correct.
continuing education.
Correct.
They don't make
My
$106,000 a year either.
I don't make that much.
Well, that's your problem. Evidently, you should be a police captain because the police captain made $106,000 a year, plus he's eligible for the 5% increases, and he gets $30,000 a year in benefits. And then there's people in here just bury their head, oh, that's not true. It is true. I'd called Ryan Duke. Maybe we need to have Ryan Duke in there. I just asked him a point blank question. And you guys are walking around the barn like the police chief did. It's a yes or no question. Are they eligible for an additional? They get 1.5. Are they eligible for an additional 5% based on their job performance?
And I believe you got the answer is yes, but that is not equating to 6.5% in a year's increase.
It's not different than from previous contracts.
Not different from previous contracts.
And we asked for that to be changed. This council, I was there,
All the part of the
Ask-
negotiation strategy.
asked for the negotiating committee
Is that not-
to address that because we have a wide disparity with the captains. And all you management
the
said,
contract that we-
I agree with you, we have too big a disparity. But what did you do about it in negotiations? Nothing.
Well, now, I think if we recall the numbers, I believe for the sergeants and I believe the captains, correct, Brent, that the effective annual increase for those contracts with all sum total of the negotiations was less than 1%.
That's
I
correct.
believe for the communication operators and for the police officers, the sum total, when you looked at everything, was a little bit higher than that.
For the police officers.
So that obviously will tend to lessen the disparity. And I think there is a general consensus agreement that in future contracts and with everything else, we will attempt to do even more to try and get within a range that will lower that disparity.
Explain to me
But,
what you mean by sum total.
I mean, with all the various financial, basic financial things that were settled or agreed to with different things,
I
it
understand,
ends up.
I understand that. You know, I'm not illiterate. I understand all that. I've got a basic question.
Okay, well,
You're like the police chief. You're walking around the barn with me.
I'm not walking around the
Yes,
barn.
you are.
No, I'm not.
You're saying they made gains in the contract, which they did. They did not make a gain on the 5%.
I didn't say that.
You
Did I
said
say
the
that I
sum
made the
to-
gain on the 5%?
You
I said
said-
the net effect of the contract
If I might summarize.
financial
I think we all
terms
heard.
was less than 1% annually.
Correct.
That's not true.
In
It can't
terms
be
of
true.
both the additional incentives that the city offered and the concessions that the various unions made, regardless of whether the salary increase was 1.5% or 1%, the net effective additional cost to the city is less than 1% for each of those groups, or possibly for the officers slightly more than 1%, which was well within the stated objectives of what council had asked as an end result to happen.
That's a wishy-washy way. Here's next year, I'm going to come back. The fact of the matter is, the captain, 106,309. You telling me next year there's going to be a 1% increase? I'll be back here next year, and you're going to see they're going to get their 5%, and they're going to get their 1.5%.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
I just want to note that that difference in wages has come from years and years of contracts. Contracts that previous members of this council had proved at 3% by 3% by 3% raises, 9% over 3 years on some of these contracts used to be. Now we're down to where we're talking 1% here, there, totaling 3%. That you cannot just go in and tell the captains today you're going to make $35,000 less. You can't do that with union employees, and so you have to continue to mark it down and nick it down, and we should probably start doing a better job of doing it. And it's not just compensation; it's uniform allowances, which is high in the captains. I agree with you on that. There's benefits and benefits, not just health care, but exercise. There's other things that together we've worked, both sides, the police and the city side, to start bringing these down over time.
And I think per the report that we had gotten, those wide variety of things were addressed by our negotiators, and many of them were accepted on our terms or very favorable terms by the unions, is what I recall hearing.
I guess as a council member, it would be my goal, you know, in the last fireman's contract, the firemen were more than fair with the city. Through the fire chief's effort, the deputy chief's efforts, the overtime in our fire division has dropped dramatically. But yet, I think it's the overtime in our police division that's driving up a lot of those salaries on top of their wages. So it would be my goal as a council member that we make it a priority to address the overtime issue that we have within our police division. There's been things that have taken place, you know, some things that the law director's put in place that, you know, have contributed to driving that overtime down, but we still need to take whatever steps necessary to continue to drive that overtime costs down.
Well, to be clear, I think it's not, with the police division, it's not so much overtime, it's what we'd call the special duty time. And I honestly, I don't think you would find any members of our staff negotiating team, Mark, myself, well, maybe Mark, but myself certainly, I agree with you. I think those costs are exorbitant. I think that when you have members of our police division who are making 250% of the median household income in Xenia, I think that's a problem. I agree. I agree 100% with what you're saying. But my role is to provide for council a recommendation that gets the best value given all the conditions at play. And so we've put something together in good faith with these folks because they have made some concessions on things that were specific goals the council had identified. And what we're saying is we think this is the best value we can get for this for the citizens, for the community, given the hand we're dealt. The state of Ohio collective bargaining laws are what they are. I think it's one of the most egregious, issues ever put on the taxpayers in the state. But the system is something we have to work in the way it is today. So I would share some of those goals. I think we have to attack those special duty pay. I think they're in general unnecessary. But again, I think it's something that we have to work on over time because we cannot unilaterally effectuate a change. It has to be agreed to through the process.
Could you, for the public and myself, the last 3 years, give us a rundown of what the police officers got in raises? Based?
Can you give that to us at our next meeting,
I was
please?
going to say, yeah, I can't tell you right now.
No, based. What was their salary increase last year? And evidently, I'm the only one talking about 5%. What was their salary increase last year, per year?
Their base wage increase? Off the top of my head, do you remember? I don't, to be quite honest.
Not really. They went
Let's
0 to
put
1,
this as an
0
action
and
item,
1s.
please. Deliver it to us in advance of our next meeting for consumption.
And I want the 5% included in that. Is that fair?
Well, we can identify their base increase, and we can identify any other special duty pays that would be eligible for any of the different groups.
Which comes under the 5%.
I think we're saying the same thing. It's probably a semantics issue. But what I'm saying is, when we talk about a 1.5% increase in wages, that's on the base wages at each step.
I understand.
The additional wages, the 5% you're talking about, is a premium pay. That's that special duty pay. That is not a base wage. They're not getting 1.5% on that additional 5%.
But they're eligible for that.
Yes, sir.
On and above the 1.5%.
Correct. On an annual basis.
My point exactly. So I don't, and now you're under 1%. Really? Really? Based on what? Based on just the whole contract? I'm talking about wages only. I'm not talking about gains in the other. I'm talking about the wages. You're saying the net effect is, you guys are walking around the barn.
I believe the net effect that they're describing is very literally, if you look at it in only dollars and cents, the city of Xenia will pay this much money for its captains this year and next year. And what I hear our city manager and our finance director telling us is that the aggregation, the pluses that we gave them, the minuses that they agreed to in concessions, this number and this number only differ by approximately 1%. That true?
That's not a true statement. And I want you to come back, or the next council meeting, and explain that further.
I believe that's what I heard.
That's what I heard too, but I'm saying
Thank
it's
you.
not true.
Please give us the report at the next session.
Absolutely.
Any other discussion on this issue, please? Roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaut.
No.
Councilman Lauterbach.
No.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Bailiff.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Communication
3 down, 1 to go,
operators.
Mr. City Manager.
No, we got this.
Communication.
That's what I mean, 3 down and 1 to go.
Oh, okay.
He's making notes for himself.
Oh, okay.
I think communications operators is the final one, correct?
Yes. Motion, please, for communications operators accepting the terms and conditions of those collective bargaining results.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Mills. Second, please. Second by the Vice President. Any discussion or question on the terms and conditions for the communications operators? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Long.
Aye.
Councilman Kaut.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mills.
Aye.
Mayor Bailiff.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. City Manager?
Thankfully,